Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another Wristwatch production. My name is Brandon, and for this video I wanted to talk about Legend of Korra Book 3, since that just got done. And I wanted to talk about that because I thought the season finale was awesome, and I've been wanting to talk about Legend of Korra for a while, but I just decided, you know, I'm gonna wait until Book 3 is... I wanted to talk about it before Book 3, and then I ended up not doing it, so then I'm like, well, I'm gonna wait till Book 3 is over. And now Book 3 is over, so now I can talk about it. There are going to be spoilers. First, I'm going to start off by talking about the season, and then I'm going to start off by speculating about the next book, because the next book is the last one. Book 4 is the last season of Legend of Korra. It's the last 12 episodes. Looking quite forward to it. Last 13 episodes, I should say. So to get right on into it, just a thought about Book 3 overall. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was very well done compared to the previous two books. I mean, I thought Book 1 was great, and I know a lot of people were very upset about that ending. But me personally, I was okay with it. I thought the ending very much made sense the way it progressed. I wasn't really a fan of how everything got all wrapped up in the end, and I think that's really the weak point. I enjoyed Book 2 when it was on, but I definitely feel Book 2 massively suffers at the end, where it doesn't even make sense, to the point where the writers don't even seem to realize what they wrote. And I think that's pretty bad on their part. I think that's pretty terrible. All the components that were included in the ending of Book 2, the astral projection, Korra being able to project herself that way, using the Tree of Time to resurrect like Rava or whatever the hell they did. The objects in question made sense to me, but the biggest problem is that how they all tied together didn't really make sense. It's like okay, we have the what, we have the why, but we don't have the how. Book 2 also had the problem of suffering from Korra being insufferable, Asami getting stunted in her character development by pretty much not being there, Bolin just being super stupid, and Mako being kind of bland, to be honest, you know, out of the main four characters. And in general, they were all kind of meh, like kind of worthless in my opinion. Except for Korra, obviously. That being said, we're not going to go into detail about Book 2. What I want to go into detail is Book 3. And going into Book 3, I think I can pretty much speak for everyone when I say we were all nervous. We were excited, but some of us were not excited in the best of ways. Me personally, I was excited because I was like, I want to see what change means. I want to see what all of this means. And I think it was a very great way to start it off. You know, the spirit portals are open, so some weird stuff is going to happen to the world. Things are going to happen to the world that hadn't happened before. Such as, for example, airbenders coming to fruition. It's never really explained, but I think at the same time, we already kind of got the explanation of the spirit portals were opened, and airbenders as a culture received a sort of reawakening. And we never really got to explore the plotline with Republic City and the spirit vines taken over by Republic City, but I was kind of okay with that. I was okay with the focus on the four main villains, which were the Red Lotus, Zahir, Ghazan, Minghua, and Pali. I thought were cool, but mostly just Ghazan and Zahir, because Minghua and Pali really didn't get much to them. And I think it's one of the main complaints with this season is when we get to the end of the book and we have Zahir learns to fly. Zahir becomes an airbender, and Zahir learns to fly at the end by releasing his earthly desires. As an airbender, he unlocks an airbending ability that had been sealed for a long time. And a lot of people were kind of upset by this because Pali dies in one of the most brutal ways ever, which is something I want to point out about this season. This season was incredibly dark compared to any season from Avatar: The Last Airbender or any of the previous Korra seasons. I mean, Zahir suffocates the Earth Queen to death because Zahir's motives are anarchy. And I think a lot of people are confused by what that means. It's not necessarily that Zahir wants to throw the world into chaos and war. What he wants is a world where people have freedom, where people are not oppressed. That's essentially his goal. And he feels he needs the Avatar to do that. As time progresses, however, by the end of the season, he wants to simply get rid of the Avatar. Because by ridding the world of the Avatar cycle, the Avatar is a relic of a bygone age, is essentially what he says. And it's actually quite the theme for the series of Legend of Korra, is the Avatar necessary? In book 1, we have Amon, who is getting rid of bending. And the world, the Equalist movement is moving quite strong. And Amon wishes to rid the world of bending, as well as the Avatar, despite being a bender himself. And Amon is a villain with little motivation, but I'll get into that in the future. And continuing from that, in book 2, we have Unalaq, who wishes to merge with Vaatu and become the Dark Avatar, because he believes that the world should not be necessarily, that the spirit world and the human world should not be separate, and that Vaatu, who wishes spirits to become dominant and sees bending as a massive threat. Granted, Vaatu's evil as fuck, that's the whole point, but Unalaq supports the idea of the spirit world and the physical world merging and entering a form of chaos as well, and believes that the Avatar, somebody who holds power over all 4 bending styles, is sort of preventing the world from getting in the way, because the Avatars refuse to open the spirit portals. Thus, the Avatars are getting in the way, and that's sort of the ideal behind Unalaq. And then we have Zahir, who believes that the Avatar is not necessary, because by plunging the world into an anarchist state without oppression, there's no need for the Avatar to maintain harmony. But not only that, because the Avatar themselves, by holding all of that power above the people, makes themselves an oppressor in a way. I think he views the Avatar as an oppressor in a way. So it's an interesting thing about Zahir, and I enjoyed that Zahir, as opposed to the previous 2 villains, had a goal. Amon's goal was to rid the world of benders, but we're never given a proper motivation for why. He gets pissed off at his dad, and then decides to leave his family, and shows up back in Republic City as Amon, pushing the Equalist movement. Now, my personal theory was always that he hated bending, that he was just sort of like, fuck you guys, look at what bending is doing, like our dad is being a brutal asshole because we can bend, and he wants to use us as our tools. So instead he decides to go get rid of bending, and he gets a following, but then eventually he bails. And he decides with Tarlok, oh, we're gonna go home and it's all gonna be the same. So that really doesn't seem to fit completely. Like, I'm really confused as to about Amon's motivations. And then you have Unalaq, whose motivations are never clear. He's just evil for being evil's sake. And again, I'm okay with a villain who's just evil and loves it. Like, he's not a tragic villain. I'm fine with that. But without the proper motives, without the proper, like, what's driving him to be this way, I guess I don't really get it. Like, did he see the error of his ways? Did he see clarity? We're sort of just given the idea that even from a young age, he was always just evil, and it doesn't really play with me. Zahir, on the other hand, has motivations. He has the motivation of a philosopher who he believes is speaking the truth, Guru Lakima, who was an airbender. And Zahir, as a villain, I thought was really cool. I also thought it was cool how strong he was, and I also thought it was really cool that they went the route of giving us an airbending villain. For the past 2 seasons, we've had waterbending villains, and granted, Amon was focused into bloodbending, but nonetheless, they were waterbending villains, and I think we've had plenty of Earth antagonists throughout Avatar: The Last Airbender. But you had the Dai Li in Avatar: The Last Airbender in Book 2, and then with Legend of Korra, we had the Earth Queen. So I think we've seen, granted, she's not an Earthbender, I don't think, but it still shows we've had enough of the Earth Kingdom as an antagonist, you know, and I think that's fine. Getting an airbending villain, I think, is a very unique taste. I think it's a very unique flavor, and I really enjoy that. That being said, the thing about Zahir is that he's from the Red Lotus, and the Red Lotus are interesting. And I'll be getting into more of that in the future, but what I always had a problem with this season is him and his 3 powerful benders. Minghua, who is a waterbender who can bend without arms, which is something I don't have a problem with. I think we've seen bending before without people having to do martial arts movements. In fact, the one that immediately comes to mind is in we have firebenders who can breathe fire. Aang is able to just, blow air out. He sneezes and he flies like 10 feet up in the air. We also saw Boomy, who, the clearest example, bent earth with his chin on the day of Black Sun. That's how he broke out of his prison. All that being said, we've seen bending without arm movements and such. So Minghua using water as her arms really isn't that much of a stretch, to be honest. Pali, she is a combustion bender. We've seen combustion bending before, though hers is more skilled because she's curving the shots in all sorts of which ways. So she's incredibly skilled, significantly more skilled than the Combustion Man character from season 3 of The Last Airbender. And then my biggest problem was Ghazan. Now, a lot of people have a problem with Zahir being as skilled of an airbender as he is. I don't. I really don't. It became very clear that he is a man who heavily studied airbending philosophy, and as we all know, your philosophies and ideals and personality are really a huge chunk of being able to bend effectively. As an airbender, you have to be light, you have to be sort of detached and mobile and constantly on your feet, like a leaf in the wind is the common example. And Zahir is very much that. Zahir also adapted to many airbending philosophies and many ideals of the old monks. I mean, on top of that, Zahir is a very acrobatic person. It wouldn't surprise me that once he got a feel for airbending, which would have come quickly due to his philosophies and personality type, that he would be able to quickly learn airbending. And it was shown in the season when he fought Tenzin that he is still outclassed as an airbender in terms of combat. He is still very much outclassed because Tenzin was kicking his ass, to be fair, which I thought was awesome. A lot of people also had problems with Zahir being a very spiritual person. I don't really think that's an issue, and I don't know why people have a problem with it. He clearly seems like a very spiritual person. It is entirely possible that he spent his years in prison meditating. I don't know why people have a problem with this. I think people have a problem with the idea of somebody being able to project themselves into the spirit world, but it's been shown that if people are spiritually aware enough and spiritually sound enough that they can do that. I mean, Iroh was able to pass into the spirit world upon death, and he was clearly a very spiritual person. I don't really think that was an issue, and Aang was very easily able to project himself into the spirit world as well. I think he had a little bit of a tough time at first, but he was still an incredibly spiritual person as he was taught as a monk, so that's sort of the idea behind that. Now, as for why Jinora can astral project, I have a problem with that, but not as much as I did before. I think I just take it that it's sort of a gift. We've seen many instances of people simply having a gift and being able to do it, though none of them are as far-fetched. I mean, Azula had blue fire. There was never any explanation for Azula having blue fire other than she's a prodigy. So there you go. Like, that was never addressed, and people were like, no, it's fine because it functions like regular fire. But I mean, Jinora being able to spiritually project in the human world as compared to the spiritual world, that's the way it is. So I've come to accept that. I have a problem with lava bending. I think lava bending is cool, but the reason why I had an issue with lava bending, and I could understand it now, but I still have an issue with it, is because lava bending is something that in Avatar: The Last Airbender was stated specifically to be an ability that only a fully realized avatar can do. And I was under the impression it was because it consisted of both firebending and earthbending. Unless you have a very powerful earthbender and a very powerful firebender capable of doing that in synchronization, capable of synchronizing their bending. I mean, Katara and Aang were able to bend clouds together before Aang learned waterbending via a combination of airbending and waterbending. So it doesn't seem that far-fetched. Regardless, I still had a bit of an issue with it until upon further inspection I realized that really, when you think about it, earthbending, turning earth into magma, could be as easy as vibrating the earth and then simply just creating a pool of magma, and then manipulating whatever molten rock is in it. I mean, if you think of it a lot like the waterbenders manipulating water into ice or into steam, the biggest issue is, I think a lot of people have a hard time grasping this, is waterbenders do it, it's more of a changing its state of matter. Changing it from water ice is really sort of on a molecular level. They're just like, oh, I have water in this liquid form, now I'm going to stop it and it's going to become ice, kind of thing. Now I'm going to stop the molecular at a molecular level, I'm going to slow it down and it's going to become ice, or I'm going to accelerate it and it'll become a gas. Rather, is they can't really heat it up or cool it. And granted, there are flaws in that logic, believe me, like I understand that, but it still works. And I think earth bending can work in that level. The problem I have with lava bending is that they don't explain it. And this is my problem with book 3 and Legend of Korra as a whole, is Legend of Korra never stops and just explains things. They never do that. It's a huge problem, because Avatar The Last Airbender, every time they would do something, they would at the very least explain it. And even if you felt it was a half-assed explanation, it was an explanation nonetheless, and you had to take it for what it was. Legend of Korra, they don't explain it. They explain Amon's blood bending as nothing more than genetics. His dad could blood bend, and that was a unique trait. Blood bending without a full moon, because blood bending was only capable at a full moon. He was able to do it outside of that. And Amon and his brother had that genetic trait passed on, because as we know, bending is genetic. You're either born with bending or you're born without bending, and it's as simple as that. Going further, Unalaq's being able to control spirits with water. That is, again, an item that is never explained. Now, I could probably give an explanation. It wouldn't be a very good one, but for example, water bending is very close spiritually because they learned it from how the moon interacts with the ocean, and the moon spirit and the spirit of the ocean, or the spirit of the water, live together in the spirit oasis, and there are two of very, very few spirits that still live in the physical world. Now that the spirit portals are open, that's a different matter, but the thing is, they never explain how that works, and that again is the problem. And on top of that, they don't explain how lava bending works. I'd be okay with lava bending if they gave an explanation, but they don't. And on top of that, by the end of the season, Bolin can lava bend, and again, it doesn't really make sense. Granted, we don't really see him creating magma, we just see him sort of tossing it back at Gazan and stopping the magma that's existing, so he's not like a master lava bender or anything. I still have a problem with the fact that since we're never explained how lava bending works, I have a real hard time accepting that, despite the fact that I really like Gazan and I think lava bending is a cool thing. It's not explained, and that's why I have a problem with it. As for the other parts of book 3, I feel like Korra advanced a lot as a character. I feel like Mako did, although why he didn't lightning bend until the end of this season and how he was able to lightning bend so quickly and so effortlessly is beyond me, because he was shown that he was able to lightning bend in book 1. In fact, lightning bending helped him sort of get Amon the fuck off of him and Korra for an extended period of time, but he never lightning bends again, and it never makes sense. Bolin was... It was clearly very foreshadowed that Bolin was going to get lava bending, so I can't say it surprised me, but I still have an issue with it. Bolin was, for a lot of the season, his jokes were just kind of falling flat. They weren't really funny. He still had some funny moments, but it felt a little too forced, and Bolin as a character overall is just kind of, I don't really know how I feel about it. We have Asami, who was more prominent than she was in book 2, but come on, Asami's a badass. She's a badass. She's an interesting character, and they're not doing anything with her. Her entire plot is Mako's love interest, and it really pissed me off. I'm glad that her and Korra interacted a lot more on a friendly level, so that was cool. A lot of people are shipping the Korra-Sami. Honestly, I'd be okay with that. I think that would be very progressive for a show, for a kid's show. It'd be really interesting if there was a lesbian relationship on the show. I'd be more than okay with that. I think it would be cool, and I think it would be interesting. But at the same time, I don't know if they'll do that, and I don't know if they'll go that far. So the major characters were still kind of meh. I think that's been the biggest problem with Legend of Korra, is their main character cast is not as compelling as Avatar The Last Airbender. From the very beginning of Avatar The Last Airbender, you had Aang, Sokka, Katara, and Zuko, and then Toph came into the picture. I suppose you could throw Iroh in there too if you really wanted to. They were quite the interesting cast. And that being said, Korra, Bolin, Mako, and Asami had stuff to them in book 1, but in book 2 they kind of lost it, and in book 3 they gained some interest back, but I'm still not fond of them. And we have Jinora, who I like, but I just wish she would do more. You know, she's claimed at the end of the season to be an airbending master. We don't really see it. We see her as sort of a natural leader. We see her as intuitive. She is also more skilled on a spiritual level, which isn't airbending specific, it's just that air nomad culture is very spiritual. That she is more skilled in that area than any other airbender we've seen. Jinora definitely has the chops, and I can believe that she's an airbending master, but I want to fucking see it. So in book 4, I better see it. That being said, there's Kai, who was introduced this season. Kai's okay. I think he could be cool, but they need to work on him. What I really enjoyed this season was Lin and Su. Lin Beifong and Su Yin Beifong. Those are the children of Toph Beifong, and they both have 2 different fathers. And they both talked about how Toph was always preoccupied with being in the police, and so Lin followed in her path. Su did directly the opposite, and Lin and Su clash a lot early on. But then eventually they come to amends to even have a very touching moment in the end, and both of them are badass. I mean, we've known Lin was a badass from book 1, but Su, oh my gosh. So when they killed Pai Li by Su wrapping her armor around her face as she's about to fire off a combustion shot, effectively exploding her own head, I thought that was pretty fucking brutal. Which of course is the event that allows Zahir, who we know from the beginning that Pali is Zahir's love interest from the very beginning, that those two are in love. Her death allows Zahir to let go of his earthly desires. The thing is, we don't get a lot of development in the way of their relationship, so it's very hard to take like, oh, I guess Zahir's earthly desires are finally gone. Like it didn't have the impact that it needed to have. That being said, I thought Ghazan was a super cool character. I liked how he wasn't really a total douchebag. He's just sort of doing his job, and he's following Zahir because he wants freedom. He doesn't want to go back to prison. He doesn't want to necessarily be oppressed. He seems like a guy who just wants to live a peaceful and happy life. I respect that. I like that as a character trait, but I also like Ghazan because he is sort of the guy who enjoys the fight. And near the end when he's smiling and Bolin's like, why are you smiling? And Ghazan just goes, because I'm remembering the last time we fought. And Bolin says he has a few new tricks, and Ghazan's just like, bring it on, bro. And I thought that was really cool. I thought it was really cool that Ghazan was sort of impressed by another earthbender, especially considering he had clearly taken a liking to Bolin in a previous episode. I really enjoy that, and I think what I enjoy most of all is, first off, I want to point out that a lot of people have problems with Korra and her avatar state being weakened. I'm going to say that for 2 reasons. One, it was the mercury poisoning, which a lot of people have a problem with how Jinora figured it out. And I think it was very clear to a lot of people that that poison was made of something that wasn't just water. So it was either being water bent or it was being metal bent. And I think that was very clear. And so the fact that Jinora just decided to be like, well, it looked metallic, so I'm going to say it's metallic and hope that someone like Su, who is probably the most skilled metal bender that we've seen in the entire series. I think she's very easily probably the most skilled metal bender that we've seen in the series next to Lin. We've heard of Toph, and we know that Toph is probably still alive. She's just wandering the earth, which I find interesting. I also find interesting that Toph, the character who I think a lot of people would have felt the least likely to have kids, has 2 kids from 2 different dads, and we haven't heard anything about Sokka having a kid. And Zuko has 2 kids. So Zuko has 2 kids. Toph has 2 kids from 2 different fathers. And Katara and Aang had 3 kids. Sokka and Suki didn't have any kids. Seems a little bit weird to me, but I guess I'll buy it for now. I guess there's always book 4 to introduce Sokka's children. Anyway, as I was saying about Korra's avatar state, a lot of people have problems dealing with why it was so weak in the fight with Zahir and why she didn't just bend the poison out of herself. Several reasons. One, she's still a novice metal bender. Number 2, what I think people fail to realize is Korra lost all of her past lives. Now, this means that Korra no longer has the skills that her past lives had. Korra was able to energy bend in book 1 because she had Aang's past life, and Aang was the only avatar, the only known avatar to be able to energy bend. She can't energy bend anymore. She would have to learn that technique. Now, if the writers wrote it that she could energy bend, I'd be pissed. But she doesn't have her past lives anymore, which means she doesn't have any of the skills. So that's part of the reason why our avatar state is weakened, because really the avatar state is nothing more than a power boost. 3, we have the poison, which was inside of her, and that was weakening her, obviously, because her body was fighting the poison as well as fighting Zahir. And the 4th reason that I want to give is that Korra was also in a severely emotional state. She did not know that her father was alive. She believed Zahir killed her dad. She was unaware of the fact that her father was alive, so she believed Zahir had killed her dad. She didn't know what happened to the airbenders, so as far as she was concerned, they might have been dead. And she's under the influence of a poison which many believe to be mercury, though it's not confirmed. And she just hallucinated and got told by 3 previous villains, Vaatu, Unalaq, and Aman, that she's worthless and has no place in this world. She's in a very emotionally affected state, so I don't understand why people have such a problem accepting this. And the ending of the series, getting to that, was very emotional. I felt it had a huge emotional impact for me. It was very dark, and I felt that Korra sitting there in a wheelchair, which I don't understand why people cannot accept why Korra would be depressed. She just got her shit wrecked. She's recovering from an incredibly deadly poison, over which the course, as I'll say it again, she was told by 3 previous antagonists that there was no purpose for the Avatar. Zahir told her there was no purpose for the Avatar, and she has already felt for the entirety of the season, since book 2, that she is worthless as an Avatar. So it's kind of a common theme. That being said, I find it very interesting that they're going with her being the beginning of a new age. Now, she was both happy and sad at the end because, again, her shit was wrecked and she was still recovering. And a lot of people think she's paralyzed. No, she's not paralyzed. She just is recovering from the poison. Again, she got her shit wrecked. She's depressed too. She sees that the airbenders have now taken their job to police the world, the job that the Avatar had. So it's very possible that she also feels depressed that someone else has to do this, because Korra has always felt that as the Avatar, she has to do everything alone. That's kind of always been her thing. That being said, all in all, I felt this season was fantastic, and I can't wait for season 4. But I just wish things would have been explained. Now, going forward, I want to talk about... I actually want to talk about another thing in Book 3. And this will be going forward into my speculation. We have the Red Lotus. Now, we learned that the Red Lotus is actually a part of the White Lotus that broke off after Aang had come into his fully realized position as an Avatar. The Red Lotus believed that they were supposed to sort of keep everything in control. That includes the Avatar. You know, they're supposed to keep the Avatar in check. Whereas the White Lotus became sort of a guardian for the Avatar. Like, they watched over the Avatar. And Zahir also claims that they needed Korra for something. It's never expressly explained what they were going to use Korra for. Now, it's shown that Zahir is quite pleased that Korra opened the spirit portals, but says that Unalaq, who was apparently a part of the Red Lotus beforehand, threw them under the bus after they tried to kidnap Korra, even helped build Please prison. I'm very curious here as to Unalaq's motivations now, because they don't go further into that. So it seems like they were just like, yeah, Unalaq was a part of us. My guess is Unalaq joined the Red Lotus because maybe he felt they would put him in a powerful position, or maybe his spirit water bending was a unique trait, but it wasn't, because Korra knows how to do it. So it can't be entirely that unique. And so he joins the Red Lotus in the attempt to be like, I'll further my knowledge, or maybe he genuinely bought into the beliefs. And then was like, oh, we want Korra to open the spirit portal, and we want Korra to help us restore the earth. Why don't we use her to open the spirit portal and then merge with Vaatu? And Zahir also claims that they never planned on freeing Vaatu or any of that. They just wanted to bring the world more together. So they were probably going to use her to open the spirit portals, which is something that Unalaq clearly knew how to do. I think that's a very interesting thing to note, but since they don't go more into detail with it, I'm just kind of like, eh. I would love it if in Book 4 they went more into the Red Lotus. If they went into bringing Aman into it. My theory that I like is that Aman decided to, aside from Aman hating bending, decided to leave. When he left, he met up with Unalaq. And Unalaq at the time was already in the Red Lotus. So he meets up with Unalaq and meets up with the Red Lotus and joins them. Here's that they want to make the world equal. So he decides to get rid of bending, which sort of twists his own vision, but it still stems from the Red Lotus. The other way this can be taken is that he joined with Unalaq, and Unalaq was like, well, bending is a threat to Vaatu. So at this point, Unalaq's plan is already to free Vaatu. He's left the Red Lotus. And Unalaq's like, okay, so here's what we'll do. we'll free Vaatu. But since benders are a threat to Vaatu, Vaatu sees bending as a threat, which is why Unalaq decides to eventually merge with Vaatu, so that way Vaatu can have bending at his disposal as a powerful weapon. Decides, why don't we remove bending, and eventually remove the Avatar's bending. I know what you're thinking. Well, Brandon, doesn't that mean that Unalaq wouldn't be able to use Korra to open the portals? Untrue. Because Korra would still have the Avatar state at her disposal. Her bending would not be totally sealed. Or if she couldn't, maybe he knew that she was an incomplete bender. I don't know how he would have gained the knowledge, maybe from Tarlok, maybe from someone else, but he figured out that she was an incomplete bender. So Amon takes away her bending, maybe just her air bending awakens, maybe none of her bending does. And she needs to learn how to enter the Avatar state. So Unalaq swoops in, offers himself as a spiritual guidance, much like he did beforehand, and decides, hey, why don't you and I go open these spirit portals, and you can open your bending and unlock the Avatar state and help bring the world peace, much like he tried to do in this case, only I'll bet a little bit differently. Either that, or if we go with the previous notion of Amon just deciding, hey, if we remove everyone's bending, because bending is the thing bringing this world out of control, by removing the Avatar's bending, that's the way it'll be. He obviously didn't know enough about the Avatar, and he was a novice and a moron. So the reason why I'll buy either of these, but Zahir never mentions Amon. It's very possible that he was never aware of Amon to begin with. How he was made aware of Unalaq, though, I am unsure of. Or did Korra mention Unalaq first? I think Korra might have mentioned Unalaq first, or perhaps not. I'm not really sure of the circumstances how he would have learned that. It's very possible that he was having spiritual meetings with somebody else, and we are unclear as to who that person is. That being said, that's a theory that I would like for Amon to be able to tie in, because I think the Red Lotus as an overarching theme would be cool. Now, Book 4 as a villain, unsure. Could be more Red Lotus, could be not. But Zahir's group, save for Zahir, is dead. Korra doesn't know how to take away his bending, so she's not going to do that. Korra is also in a severely distraught state. Now, a lot of people have been focusing on this Kuvira girl who was part of the metal bending police, who's she was technically in a few episodes beforehand, but she was really only focused upon in the penultimate episode. And a lot of people are saying she'll be a villain. The theory that I'm a fan of is that she'll go and kill Zahir in prison for failure, for something, and she'll either be a minor villain or a minor antagonist, or she'll be sort of a character who's mixed up in it all, who's doing something for a specific purpose, and people mistake what her purpose is. She's secretly one of the good guys, and there's greater evil at hand. So that's that. Honestly, I would like to see in Book 4 Korra spending time focusing on renewing herself as the Avatar. She's going to have to recuperate in the first couple episodes. A lot of people are having a problem with, like, oh, I hope Korra doesn't heal in the first couple episodes. Let's look at Avatar: The Last Airbender Book 3. In the first episode, Aang freaks out. He goes through a huge traumatic emotional event because he was just killed, and he failed, and he believes he's failed again. He failed the people of Ba Sing Se that he promised Ba Sing Se would not fall, and Ba Sing Se fell, and he believes he failed, and in fact he was killed, which is a traumatic experience all in its own. So that being said, I think there's a lot to go for in the way of all the stuff that Book 4 has. I think going any further is far too wild and wide of a speculation, but I'm very much looking forward to Book 4, and I think it'll be really interesting. Thanks for watching, take care, and bye-bye.